I am from Pune, but our ancestral town is still in Konkan. So whenever I used to go there as a kid, every summer holiday that I spent there, I used to always hear these stories of मुंजा आएगा वो पीपल के पेड़ पे रहता है. कोंकण में तो इनफैक्ट बहुत अलग-अलग किस्म की घोस्ट है. There are too many varieties. People have these folklores जैसे हमारे चुड़ैल और शैतान होता है ना, वहाँ पे there is this thing called चकवा. I am the fourth generation filmmaker in my family. My great grandfather started a production company along with Prabhat Films in 1927. Guru Dutt was an assistant in my great grandfather's production company.
Aditya, first, many congratulations for the successive run of your film Munjya at the box office. It's a quirky horror comedy which is riding on the positive word of mouth. How would you like to today express your joy? Would you say the mission Munjya accomplished for you?
I would definitely say to a great extent it is an accomplished mission. Although we are very, very early, we are in our first week, we would like a longer run. See, it's the director's wish always कि लोग theatre में उनकी film देखें. तो जितनी लंबी, as long as I can have the theatres to myself, I would love it. But the first week has been overwhelming. It is, I would not have predicted this. I remember sitting in the office with Amar and Dinu sir, and we were discussing what should be our opening and what should be our last week की बात है कि what should be our numbers, and we were nowhere close to what we eventually got. We were surprised, and it's so reassuring that all the calculations that we say the industry makes on a film, what we make on a film, depending on newcomers है, थोड़ा Maharashtrian folklore है, 2-3 हफ्ते का ही promotion campaign हुआ है, all that kind of gets you to think कि चलो इतना हो सकता है, but then the audience proves you wrong. And this time I'm so happy that we are proven wrong by the audience.
So then you've spoken about Maharashtrian folklore. So is it based on a true story, or is it based on a story perhaps that you heard by someone during your travels?
Munjya is based on a folklore which is a folklore coming from the Konkan region of Maharashtra. Like अगर specifically Maharashtra की बात करोगे तो Maharashtra का जो पूरा the whole coastal belt of Maharashtra is called Konkan, and this coastal belt has a lot of Brahmin communities staying there. All the major towns have the Brahmin communities, and they have this एक उनका संस्कार रहते, which is their religious thing, that when the boy comes to a certain age of growing up, they perform this ceremony called Munjya. इसको मराठी में मुंजा बोलते हैं, which is the thread ceremony. उपनयन संस्कार इसको हम बोलते हैं. तो this is the thread ceremony where that मुंजा होने के बाद अगर लड़का मरता है तो उसका मुंजा बनता है. तो ये folklore जो है ना, ये folklore हमने बचपन से हम सुनते आ रहे हैं. I've always been fascinated by how this folklore kind of has caught our imagination as kids. And I have my hometown there. I am from Pune, but our ancestral town is still in Konkan. So whenever I used to go there as a kid, every summer holiday that I spent there, I used to always hear these stories of Munjya आएगा वो people के पेड़ पे रहता है. Munja's this quirk is that he's bound to that people tree. So it is a very clear kind of for us as an indication that if you ever go to close to a people tree, then you will always kind of get picked by Munjya, or आपको Munjya आके मारेगा. So it used to be very interesting for me that always whenever I used to go there as a kid, I used to stay away from the people tree, or I used to look at the people tree and be like कि नहीं यार उधर तो नहीं जाना है. So when you grow up now, you realize that these things are beliefs. It is not true. It is just kind of these stories, folklores. And I still go and I see वहाँ पे अभी भी ना beliefs कुछ है जहाँ पे नारियल लोग चढ़ाते हैं पेड़ के नीचे. अभी भी घर में कुछ शादी हो, there's a wedding or any big event, people do have these small little beliefs that they have strongly kind of generations kept alive, and which is why I thought Munjya is a story that has to be told now more than ever.
But have you ever met somebody who has an incident?
You know what? I'll tell you the funniest part of this. Now, growing up and even now after the film is released, you never meet anybody who's first-hand seen, but you always meet people जिसके किसी पहचान वाले ने देखा होता है. You always know that अरे somebody has seen a ghost. I in my life have met so many people whose friend or his friend's friend has seen a ghost, but they never have. It's always like this, right? I have never seen it. It's somebody I know as, and that is what this whole fun about it is, because I have met so many people who have told me stories about कि हमारे दादा ने, परदादा ने, हमारे अंकल ने, हमारे कजिन ने, ऐसे सब ने किसी तो गोश्त, कोंकण में तो इनफैक्ट बहुत अलग अलग किस्म की गोश्त है. There are too many varieties. People have these folklores, जैसे हमारे चुड़ैल और शैतान होता है ना, वहाँ पे there is this thing called chakwa, which is also very interesting. Chakwa is where you are moving on the same path for hours, where you think you have moved on, but you eventually end up at the same point. तो ऐसे एंड बहुत सारे नाम है ऐसे. तो हडड़ बोल के एक होता है कि हडड़ is when a lady gives birth and she dies at childbirth. There's an imagination that she is under in a well. And I've realized eventually क्या है ना, पीपल का ट्री का जो मुंजा बना है वो क्यों बना होगा, बिकॉज पीपल का ट्री में रात में क्यों ना जाना हो. द साइंस बिहाइंड इट सेज दैट पीपल ट्री गिव्स आउट carbon dioxide at night. It emits the most amount of carbon dioxide. So was there a scientific thought behind it? या रात को बहुत जगह पे because electricity नहीं हुआ करती थी, तो you don't go next close to a well because you can fall, trip and drown. So इसलिए वहाँ पे भूत होते थे क्या. तो it is quite fascinating how our ancestors have come up with these interesting stories. But I always feel that it is so fascinating to also believe a bit in those. There's a fun to that, एक मजा आता है उसमें.
So then कोई plan है now to make a series about the ghost of Konkan region?
I'll tell you what, अगर हम कोंकण में, even in fact in Marathi cinema बहुत सारी फिल्में हैं जो already इस space में बन चुकी है. I just feel that in Indian folklore only there is so much still to tell and explore. And with Maddock we're doing that, which is say the way Stree came and the way even Ruhi or Bhedia was, they were also folklores. वैसे अभी my next film with Maddock also is based on a folklore, which is not Munjya, which is very different from Munjya, and then we'll come back maybe to a Munjya follow-up. So,
but in the same space, in the same setting, milieu.
Not Maharashtra. This is a completely different setting. Okay. And even for me, it's exciting now to kind of, because I have home ground in Maharashtra. अभी home ground पे
Zombie Willy, I saw the trailer. What a lovely trailer. Zombie Willy was a fun trailer.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That also, Zombie Willy is also completely kind of a hometown film. Like Zombie Willy में रहने वाले लोगों को पता होता है कि hardships of living in Zombie Willy. So we kind of had a quirky twist to it. Same way now with the next film that we're working on with Maddock also, it has got a very interesting folklore reference to it. So I'm hoping that will also kind of catch people's attention.
So then, did you all, I mean, you and the producers, have full faith in the script? And was it a collective decision to go with the entirely young cast and not with some established actors?
Faith in the script was always there. The reason why we attempted this film, new actors or not, it was always the faith was extremely strong कि ये script अच्छी बन रही है. I have to mention one big element in this. योगेश चांदेकर जो film के writer है, a lot of it has come from him, and he is kind of the mind and the brain behind what you see in Munjya also. His contribution to the film is immense, and I feel when we had this, I had the script in my hand and read it, and I said, okay, इस पे काम किया जा सकता है. I was confident that this is going to be something that is going to be a banger. एक ही होता है कि when you have a producer who equally believes in the film, then you get that push as a director to really give it your best, because he gives you all the elements and all the weaponry that you need, to go for this fight. So ये होता है कि when first I read it, I went to Dilu sir and I said that I think Munjya खुद एक 10-11 साल का लड़का है, so when you pitching him against a bittu who is the boy, वो भी young होना चाहिए, because then you put the film into this world of equals. You're not pitching him against a 40-year-old man. The वो dynamics ही गलत है. And I said, then I see this film as a film that lends itself to the Harry Potters and the Stranger Things and those fantasy adventures. That I feel that is the film that I saw. And I told him that if you are going that route, then we have to cast a boy who looks that age, rather than casting a man and making him look young. And I'm so thankful that he completely believes in this idea that that correct hai, we can't cast a 35-year-old man and make him look 20. So 20 साल के लड़के फिर we went on auditioning, and through all the auditions that we went in, I think Abhay's audition was the best, and he saw it and he believed that I do not need any X factor in these castings. Any new guy, completely newcomer के साथ भी हम film बना रहे.
So then, when you were creating this creature Munjya, was that the biggest challenge for everybody who was part of the film, or is it inspired by a photo or a character from another film?
Yeah. But see, I'll tell you what. When the script was ready, we realized that Munjya in the film is doing things which a human cannot. वो पीठ पे लटका है, वो पेड़ों से कूद रहा है. With the human casting, हाँ, with the human casting ना limitations आ जाएंगे. Like extreme limitations. So we said इसको CG में बनाते. When we decided to make it in CG, see, I had references of Munjya the way I had envisioned him as a kid, not even now. Like the way I saw Munjya when I was a kid, I always saw Munjya as a creature who eventually is a boy who's died. So उसका physical form तो बच्चे का ही होगा, लड़के का ही होगा. But because he's on that people cut tree for so many years, his skin texture has become a little bit like that tree. He needs to have innocent eyes because he's still a kid. Because otherwise he'll look so easily like a monster. He needs to have sharp teeth because he must be hunting his prey. He must be. How does he stay on that tree for so long? He has to have his defense mechanism. So we had this, and eventually basically वो ब्राह्मण लड़का है तो जिसका मुंडन हुआ है तो those traits are a must. कि उसका head shaven off हो, उसका braid बालों की वो बाली हो कानों में, या he must wear a thread. All these elements were like a very fixed narrative in my head. When we have the boy cast, the boy has played Gotya, and when that Gotya dies and he becomes Munjya, we scanned the Gotya boy, the character, and we kind of the clothes he was wearing, the elements he was wearing, and we wanted to kind of make his version. So eventually the Munjya that you see is his version only, that he dies and he becomes Munjya. What was interesting है अभी लोग उसको Groot और Gollum और ऐसे बोल रहे थे, because honestly I'll tell you what, हमारे Indian cinema में ऐसे type का character कभी बना ही नहीं है. We have never seen. I remember as a kid having gone and seen the Chota Chetan, when I was gone to the theaters and I was very, very young then. So I remember the only like a kid ghost that I had seen is Chota Chetan, and after that I had never seen a kid who was a ghost. So that was very fascinating, and I think people drew from there because there is a little bit of similarity in the bald head and that frail body type of Gollum. But our Munjya is very different. It is nowhere close to that.
I have a reference of a Chota Chetan house in Bandra.
Oh,
but
lovely.
Each film, Aditya carries the message of the director.
Yeah.
What was it that you wanted to say with Munjya?
Completely, I wanted to make a note on patriarchy. I felt जैसे वो बालू काका के अंदर जा, you've seen the film, so I can talk to you. वैसे वो उसके अंदर मुंजा possess होता है, and all that these things that happen. I wanted to always make a note that when you see the film, it's drawing parallels between the obsession of love and romance of Munjya and Bittu. There are parallels to that. Both of them feel the same kind of, maybe their way of expressing is different, but both of them are in love with the same individual. But the way Bittu approaches and the way Bittu kind of realizes that eventually consent is important. You might love her, but if she doesn't love you back, that's okay. That is not what life is. And Munjya is this obsessed idiot who will. That's why Shah Rukh Khan ka, I don't know how many you picked up on it, but Shah Rukh Khan ka jo video tha film mein, वो reference to Dar or reference to आपका Bazigar, ये सब था. So I felt that he is that obsessed lover. So eventually the point of it was that you need to be sensitive, you need to kind of respect, and that one dialogue that Bittu says in the film, he says कि it's okay if you don't love me क्योंकि मुझे तुम्हारे सिर पे बैठा मुंजा नहीं बना. He says कि I don't want to be the munja in your life, and that is what the film is about. That, you can't impose yourself onto the people you love. You have to give them space, and that is how life is.
Also, how involved was Amar Kaushik in the film? He has made 2 high concept.
Yeah. So Amar basically was the producer of this film, and Amar is the good thing about Amar is he's first a filmmaker, like a director, and then he's a producer. So he understands that when there is a director on the film who's making his film, completely he says कि चलो यार तेरी film है तू बना ले. When you're done with it, then I always use him as a bouncing board, like कि Amar ये script है तो सुन लेना, you have any suggestions, give me. Or when we had the film edited and locked, he had not seen anything. He had not seen random footage. देखा था 1-2 दिन shoot पे आए थे, and when I had locked my edit, then he came and he said, okay, now if you're confident, show me the edit. So then he saw the edit and he gave a few suggestions. So his, I would say, involvement has always kind of helped, and I believe, as a filmmaker, that you need to show your film to a few more people before you put it out there, because you get a collective feedback. You know कि क्या work हो रहा है, क्या नहीं हो रहा है, क्या better होना चाहिए. That is important. नहीं तो हम बंद करके से फिल्में रख देते हैं और eventually public को दिखा के public बोलते हैं यार ये तो problem हो गया. तो that is Amar, he's that person I can bounce my film and ideas off to, and he gives some really good insights that help.
So, Aditya, your grandfather, Vishal Sarpotdar, was also a filmmaker.
Yeah.
You belong to film family. So then please tell about your childhood, about your family, and the films that influenced you while growing up.
So, see, actually, I am the fourth generation filmmaker in my family. My great grandfather started a production company along with Prabhat Films in 1927. The company was called the Aryan Film Company. And under that, he made around about 45 to 50 silent movies in that era, because the silent movies were repetitive. And one very interesting fact about it, that is my actual name on my documents is not Aditya, it's Guru Dutt. And Aditya became a name that everybody used to call me. Guru Dutt thoda sa purana naam lagta tha. So my parents said, "Yaar, Guru Dutt kya naam hai?" So Aditya hi bulate the. My grandfather named me Guru Dutt. He had put that my name on my birth certificate also. And that was because Guru Dutt was an assistant in my great grandfather's production company. When the great filmmaker Guru Dutt started his career, he started with Prabhat. Then he assisted in Pune. Then he assisted in a few films of ours in my great grandfather's film company. And then after that, he moved on to making his own films. So वो कनेक्शन तो बचपन से ही था. तो एक ना कहीं से तो फिल्म मेकर, फिल्म फैमिली, ये आगे जाके फिल्में बनाएगा, ये assessment था, assumption था कि क्या destiny थी पता नहीं. But I grew up in a family which always spoke about cinema, lived cinema, and only knew cinema. We used to run theaters in Pune. Alka Talkies बोल के एक theater है Pune का, बहुत famous theater है जहाँ पे सिर्फ English फिल्में चलती है. अभी वो theater नहीं है, it's a single screen. It was a single screen. We used to run that theater, and I remember spending all my post-school time in the theater, in the projection room, or in the ticket window, or in the manager's cabin. So the cinema memories are what all I have. And then kind of when you're growing up, you realize that you want to be a part, but what part? Like you want to be a filmmaker or a technician or an actor, all that you kind of realize at the age of 14, 15, where I realized that I was so smitten by this whole magic of cinema, where I could see the negatives, and in the projection room, I used to kind of reels banata tha, या वो rewinding करना, या negative splice cut करना, ये सब किया था. So I was so mesmerized by this whole process of how a film kind of light is projected and a film is shown on a screen and people are watching it, spellbound. So I said, this is what I want to do. And one couple of films that I had seen at a very, very young age, I remember in the theater, मैंने वो जो जीता वही सिकंदर film देखी थी ना, मुझे वो बहुत inspire किया था. I think at that age, I was very, very young. I was 7, 6, 8. And I was spellbound watching that film. I said, "Hey, kya film hai?" Then later on, I saw Forrest Gump or Shawshank Redemption नाम की film देखी थी, which kind of changed the way I looked at cinema. So I think there are some films that I will always kind of hold very dear.
And finally, Aditya, then do you agree that Marathi cinema and Marathi audiences are very mature, and filmmakers like to experiment a lot with their stories by reflecting caste politics, female desires, and sensitive topics? And their directors like you, there's Ravi Jadhav, there is Nagaraj Manjule, and they made some very fantastic movies like Sairat, Balak Palak, Fandri, Killa. What happened? We saw this whole wave few years ago. What happened? Why are we not seeing many such stories coming out from Marathi cinema?
It's a very, very detailed and deep conversation. Actually, this is ऐसे ना ऊपर इसके बारे में बात करके, I don't want to make a generic comment on this, because there's a major analysis that we have kind of realized that there is a reason why this is. And I'll give you a basic idea of what I feel about this. I started making movies in the year 2008, 2009. That is when Ravi started. That is when Nagaraj started much later. But when I started making movies was when this whole wave of cinema, Marathi cinema revival had started.
Yes.
So there were some really good filmmakers who we were looking up to and kind of wanting to be like. And I'll tell you what, that era, like you name Umesh Kulkarni or Sachin Kundalkar, there's some filmmakers. They were all these young filmmakers, who came from nowhere and they kind of made their first Marathi films. Till then, young filmmakers were not coming to make Marathi films. They were either assisting in Hindi films or they were just not looking at Marathi films. But these young filmmakers who came in at that point of time came from the roots, from ground up, they kind of built their. So the stories they knew of, the stories that affected them, the stories that excited them, they told those stories. Or because Marathi cinema ka budgets बहुत limited हुआ करता था, and even it was easier to make a Marathi film, and it was mainly not a star dependent industry. It was a content dependent industry. So all these filmmakers kind of back-to-back produced films that were pure content-driven films. Then Z Company, jo thi, jahan pe, they were a big production company. So they backed these films and they really through television took these films to the audience, promoted them, and people started giving great response to these films. So as filmmakers, now we got more and more confident with making good content because people were watching that good content. Somewhere mid 2016 or 2017, Styrat jab aaya, Styrat for Marathi industry was a boom. You know, a first nearly 100 crore film. Nobody had thought of it. Nobody had thought of it. What that did is, if it helped the industry also, na, somewhere, I personally feel, a lot of film producers who are not qualified producers, who are like, you know, producers who became producers because they were, it was either their hobby था या ऐसा था कि चलो पैसे बना लेंगे, या पैसा दिख रहा था कि मराठी में आ रही एक फिल्म 100 crores तक जा रही है तो हमारी भी हो सकती है the next 100 crore film. A lot of film producers started aping the Styrat ka formula. They started making similar films. And the audience was never going to watch the same film again. The way they loved Styrat, it was not possible to kind of replicate that, because what Nagaraj and the team did was phenomenal. So that's why we had so much of excess of cinema that was very similar genre-driven cinema. And that was not innovative. So I would say that every year after that, we have had some really good films, but they have been overshadowed by these excessive produced films, which really do not find the audience. And then that's somehow become the face of Marathi cinema. So last 5 to 6 years, if you ask me personally, there have every year been at least 5 to 6 films that are phenomenal. Like last year, there's a film called Atma Pamphlet, made by one of my assistants who has now become a full-fledged director, Ashish Bende. He's phenomenal. I think his film is really good. If you've not seen it, I would highly recommend that film. But Atma Pamphlet was one film that I would say is in those Balak Palaks and that genre. Baap Lake बोल के एक film थी, वो भी amazing film थी. So we have had every year 4 to 5 films. But क्या होता है ना, they get overshadowed by these comedies which are sex comedies, or they get overshadowed by typical those Styrat kind of films. So वो problem हो जाता है.
Well, we are looking forward to what you do next.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the Munjya wave. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vishal. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you.